1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear? Can everybody hear me? Yes. Can you hear me down the back? If at any point you can't, please let me know, okay? My voice is kind of gone, so you really... No, it's okay. Just yell, just give a holler if you can. Welcome. And we're going to celebrate the spring. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey through time. I can't sing, so sorry about that, even though some people will be delighted. So I'll just be playing today, but I'm going to replace the singing with some poetry and take you through the lyrics of time, the story of the harp as it's reflected through time. And I'm going to start with so many gatherings as we do with a little Irish blessing. Deep peace of running wave to you, deep peace of the flowing air to you, deep peace of the quiet earth to you, deep peace of the shining stars to you, deep peace of the watching shepherds to you, deep peace of love to you. both?
You do both?
Both. Is it too loud?
I like it. Do you prefer the electrification or the regular?
Well, it's really your choice.
I prefer the regular.
Is it too loud? Would you rather turn
No,
down?
it was nice. It was nice.
So, just to be clear, you'd rather I turned off the electrification?
No, it was fine.
Oh, okay, okay.
I just didn't know you had done that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So I just want to tie in what I'm doing here and take you back to the earliest times of the harp. And it goes back many millennia in Ireland. And any culture that had a bow and arrow ended up with the harp. And they don't all have a triangular harp now, but they have some kind of a harp. And of course, we have our own harp, and it's our national symbol. And it goes back millennium. And it goes back to a sort of a creative class, if you will, called na Fili, F-I-L-I in Gaelic. And they were the bards and the harpers, and they weren't just musicians and they weren't just poets, but they were meant to evoke all kinds of emotions before we had psychology and what have you. And the three noble strains and the three duties of the harpers were they had to make you laugh. So they had to create these tunes called the Gianthri. It's Gaelic for laughter. And they had to make tunes that could make you cry, which were called the Gulthri. And they had to make tunes that could make you sleep, which were called the Soonthri, which is my own specialty. Just a little joke there. Actually, it's not a joke. If you look at my Spotify numbers at 10 o'clock at night, they go like that. In any case, these were the noble duties of the harpers, and they went back millennium, and there were also alongside them stood the bards, who were the poets, and they kept the genealogies, they spoke of the battles, and they kept all the histories, and they were often one and the same person. They had to train for at least 7 years, sometimes up to 12 years, just to get their stripes, and it was a completely oral tradition, and they stood alongside sort of the chief, if you will, of all these tribes. And so what I'm going to do now for you is I'm going to do a sort of a little suite to show you each of these types of tunes. I'm going to start with the Gulthri, which is the sad one. And this tune doesn't have a rhythm, so I just want you to know I haven't lost the plot. It was never meant to be there in the first place, because a lot of these tunes were taken from the singers who would sing them a cappella in phrases as opposed to bar by bar. And then I'm going to run it into a kind of the Soonthri, which is more the lullaby, which you may recognize. And then I'm going to take it into the Gianthri, which is to make you happy. So, and these weren't just kind of categories. These were really emotions that it was expected to evoke. And before sleeping pills, this is what put you to sleep. And before Xanax, this is what took you out of depression. And, so, yeah, here goes. Thank you so much. Well, one of the great traditions of the old harpers and bards was they used to write deeply stylized poetry. It was complicated stuff, and one of the types of poems they used to write was called an ashling or dream, and the idea was they would fall asleep and have a vision, oftentimes of a beautiful woman, and they would describe her in great detail. And so this next tune is my own sort of tone poem in reverence to that tradition. But over time, they started to sort of have an allegorical replication, if you will, for this. And sometimes they were not so much talking about a woman as they were about Ireland. And they would give Ireland these allegorical names like Caitlín Ní Chúlcáin, Kathleen Houlihan, or Roisin Dubh, Dark Rosaline. And they were talking about something entirely different. And if you're ever around Irish people and you get the sense that you really don't know what they're talking about, or they're saying one thing and they really mean something entirely different, I just want you to know your intuition is probably spot on. So don't worry about it. It goes back a long, long way. And anyway, this is Ashling or Dream. So over time, colonization came along, and the old bardic tradition and the harping tradition was wiped out. And for a long time, there was a price on the head of harpers in particular, because they were like the media, the bards and the harpers, and they kept the genealogies and all of that stuff. They were sort of like the news and the media and whatever. So, as I said, there was a price on their head. And when what was called the penal laws came in, everything went underground because education was forbidden. So you had what were called hedge schools. And they had what were called hedge school masters who really tried to keep education and poetry alive. And so poetry and music was still very important to the people. And there's still tremendous appreciation for those things. It sort of kept up right through the centuries, even through eras where education was forbidden and people could be imprisoned if they even went abroad and got an education. And these old hedge masters used to love these references to Greek and Roman mythology. So sometimes you'll hear these Irish songs and you'll hear references to Persephone and all these things, and you'll be going, what is she doing in that song? But it was these old hedge school masters. They loved to draw in that mythologies from the Greek and the Romans. And but over time, when the Irish gained their independence, even before that, in the late 19th century, there was a revival. And but before that, I'm going to play you a couple of tunes by the last of the harpers, because the harpers became sort of itinerants. They had gone from being this creative class and they became itinerants. And among the last of them was a man called O'Carolan. And these are a couple of his tunes. And he lived through what were called the penal laws, which were extremely tough laws. But he wrote this incredibly positive music, and he lived through a smallpox epidemic and got smallpox and was blinded, as about a third of people who got it were. So he was very inspiring to me during the pandemic, and he still is, just because of what he lived through and how positive his music is. But this is one of his sort of slower tunes, and I'll run it into a fast one. And he had patrons. That was the whole system. They had patrons. They were in the houses of the big houses. And the difference between what I play and what you normally hear is this was the music of the aristocracy. It was like the classical music going back for centuries. And the great strength of this man O'Carolan was that he could play or attract the people who loved the music of the back kitchen, or whether you loved the music of the big house or the back kitchen, he was your guy. You could still love what he was doing. So here's a couple of his tunes, and he would have been in operation during the time of the penal laws. came the revival, and that was a really interesting time. And central to that revival was a man called W.B. Yeats, and I think his voice is way better than mine. Anyway, have any of you not heard of W.B. Yeats? No, sorry, I don't. That's a terrible way to put a question. But anyway, W.B. Yeats he's a Nobel laureate, and we have 5 of them, and we would have the most per capita, except for, I think it's Iceland. They have 335,000 people, and they have 1 Nobel laureate. And I'm like, that just feels really unfair. We have 4 or 5 million, and we've 5. So, but yeah, it's really interesting because the Irish didn't start out speaking English, but there's something about the turn of phrase from the Gaelic or the Irish to the English that seems to make it very musical. But in any event, he was very much central to that movement, and his mentor, a woman called Lady Gregory, really mentored a huge number of playwrights, Sean O'Casey, John Millington Synge. She was very instrumental in setting up the first theatre company in Ireland. And but he wrote amazing poetry. It was very much tied to the mythology, the folklore, and he had an incredible imagination. And his famous one is the Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. And he supposedly hated the poem. But then again, Tchaikovsky hated the Nutcracker, so we don't always know our own best work. In any event, he was very much influenced by Lady Gregory. He used to go up to Coole Park where she lived, and there were beautiful swans on the water. If you ever get to visit Ireland, be sure to go. It's kind of a hidden treasure, Coole Park. And he wrote a poem about it. The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry, under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water, upon the stones, are 59 swans. And they're still there and still spectacular. And but his most famous poetry was in 2 categories. One, the poetry around the mythology, which is beautiful, and he makes all these references to Irish mythology, which makes the poetry 10 levels deeper. But his most famous poem is The Second Coming, which refers to the centre cannot hold. And he had 1 foot, in his imagination, and 1 foot in very deep reality about what was happening before the First World War. And I'm tempted to read it, but it's deeply depressing. So if you want to take a vote, but it's such a brilliant piece of work and very apropos in a way. You know what? I'm going to read it. Take courage. It's called The Second Coming, and as I said, the centre cannot hold. You hear that referenced a lot in writings over the centuries. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconeer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, and now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. And it's not light, but anyway, and it's just deeply contrasted with his other poem, like the Song of the Wandering Aengus. I went out in the hazel wood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. Very much kind of, he sees a glimmering girl. It's almost in the Aisling tradition of seeing this this beautiful woman that he is a vision of. But anyway, I'm going to play another tune for you now and totally put you to sleep, as is my job. Well, we're coming up towards the end, because after the revival, the harp started to come back along with all the other art forms, thanks to Yeats, Lady Gregory, and a slew of wonderful playwrights, the Abbey Theatre, and it was very much on the tail end of that movement that my older sisters and I got hooked on the harp and all of that good stuff. Or the people who taught us got hooked, and the tradition started all over again, because the harp was not to be found for a long time. So we've those folks to thanks. So anyway, I'm going to come up on the present day and play a tune for you called The Dove's Return, which is about a return to peace and sending out a prayer for peace all around the world. Okay, thanks, Jordan. So I'll still do another couple of tunes, but we usually in the libraries do a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them, and then I'll go back and do a few more tunes before we send you on your merry way. So, yes.
What's the difference between an Irish harp and the harp you find in Philharmonic Hall?
So did everyone hear the question? Great. This is the ancestor to the harp in the orchestra. So the question is, what's the difference between this harp and the orchestral harp? So remember I mentioned early on that the first harp came from the bow and arrow. And all harps, so any country that had, or any culture that had a bow and arrow, ultimately developed some kind of a harp. It just mightn't look like what we call a triangular harp. So we still have triangular harps in South America and in the Celtic world, like Ireland and Scotland. And these gave way to, around the 19th century, Erard developed engineering. So instead of just raising one lever at a time to change each string at a time, he developed levers so you could do all the C's at once and all the D's at once. And then they started doing double pedals, so you could do flats and sharps. And so it's just a more developed version. It's just technology over the centuries. So, but this is the grandfather to that, and the bow and arrow is the, primordial ancestor. So, I hope that answers that. Yes, ma'am.
I had seen you previously a long time ago for an Imbolc celebration.
Yes.
You did that in honor, obviously, of us. And I wondered, do you have other than St. Bridget, do you have other music that is inspired in that way?
Sure, there's Imbolc. So in the old art, you asked about Imbolc and music around the old calendar or sort of ancient music, yeah. So Imbolc is very easy because it traces, like that very first poem I read, okay, it is probably, it's called Emergence Landing, and they think it dates back 500 to 700 BC. It's I am the ox upon the wave. Oh no, I didn't read that poem, did I? I meant to. Okay, it's where, so that's the oldest piece of poetry we have. I am the ox upon the, I am the wave upon the sea. And the reciter merges with nature. And monks would have written it down several centuries later. And then it would have found its way sort of into the vernacular or whatever. And it's a similar story with Bridget. She was originally a goddess, and then over time, with the move to Christianity, she became a saint. And she's still a saint, but she has all the classical symbology of a goddess. She actually was believed to have changed water to beer, something else to salt. She has really, and she was all this classic symbology of a fire goddess. And so, and she had fires lit in her honor, and she's part of the fire festival tradition in the quarter days of the year. So it's a feast day. It's an actual feast day in Ireland. It's now a national holiday as of last year, which is lovely. And she represents the divine feminine, and she was considered present at the birth of Christ as the midwife, because the Irish, we like to insert ourselves everywhere, and not just by the side, but the midwife. And she was considered the Mary of the Gael, and she's a figure I have a lot of affection for, because there's something very earthy and down to earth. And they believed, she passed by the house on the eve of her feast on January 31st. So, she's a very easy figure to write about, her representation in the divine feminine. And the Irish were very cut off from Rome, and they were never invaded by Rome. They were never invaded by the barbarians. And so this Christianity that came in a lot of it came in actually from Syria. And the Irish would travel over to Spain and down to Syria for the pure drop. They're believed to have been in contact with the early Desert Fathers. So they had this version of Christianity that was really interesting, mixed in with their own kind of old stuff. So, it just made it really interesting. So, all that pours through, and it pours through versions of Celtic Christianity. And all sounds good to me, all inspiring. So, sorry, long answer. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. Anacorn.
Anakuan.
Yeah, Anacorn. One of my favorite tunes of yours, but I don't really speak Gaelic, so I'm curious as to what's the story behind the song?
Anakuan. Oh my God, this is a sad story. You know that.
Well, it is a very sad, mournful tune.
It's a mournful tune. It fits in the Guthrie. You know, it's a Guthrie tune, and it kind of, I can tell you a little about the function of those tunes, which is, it's about a drowning. Anakun is about a drowning. Daim se sláinte is fada ves trocht an méid bahu as Anakun. As long as I live, I'll always remember the number that drowned at Anakun. And it's about a drowning, and drownings would have been common. You know, you had a lot of fishing on the coastal areas. And it's a song which, you know, it's a song for emotional release, and it's definitely in the Guthrie. It's it's the kind of song you can mix up the verses. It doesn't matter what order the verses are. It's often sung a cappella, and you know, that sean-nós singing. It's kind of, there's a lot of respect for people who do what's called sean-nós, which means old way singing. They kind of go that bit deeper, and there's a lot of gratitude felt towards people who do that and sing those kind of songs, because in the old tradition, when you look at the old lament traditions, if one person in the community goes deep and sort of does the grieving, it does it for the whole community, you know, even if only one person's doing the singing. But it's an amazing song, and you know, I've heard it done beautifully. So, oh well, thank you.
That's one of the reasons I love that tune when I heard it for the first time. I was like, it's beautiful. So.
Well, she's definitely just expressing grief, and it's repeating the same, the same feelings of grief, just in different verses. But it's interesting because now we sort of only express grief mostly about love. You know, it's I lost him, or she left me, or I'm upset. But people there's songs about everything in the Irish tradition. It's anything you want. It's there, which is, I find it a powerful influence and comfort, to be honest. They've all been through it before us, and that's kind of comforting. So, yes.
Curious, any of your songs that you have, Osquailga, have you written any of them yourself, or are they all just songs you take back from Ireland?
Anything Osquailga in Irish is traditional. It's traditional. I've written stuff, but nothing. Yeah, God, now that's putting the pressure on. Yeah, I don't know if I'd have the skill, but I know there's a challenge. But thank you. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
You refer to that hop as the grandfather.
Yes.
Now, I've seen a lot of orchestral hopists, usually on TV, PBS, and I've gone to a number of concerts too. Now, you call it a grandfather, but I've never ever seen a male hopist.
Oh, there is plenty, like, yes, and a lot of the great, the Harpo, Marx. Well, yes, Salcedo. A lot of the masters were male, and a lot of male harpists coming up now in Ireland and Scotland as well. The young men are taking a great interest, and in the old Irish tradition, because it was a travelling profession and that wasn't really ideal for women, they were all men. It was in the revival that when it became sort of the purview of sort of women of a certain class, that it went into the female domain. Yeah. So the men are coming back, which is great. Yeah. It is encouraging. So, all right. I think that's it, is it? I'll do another couple of tunes, and thank you all so much for coming out, and my thanks to the library for having me, and my apologies about the voice. It's been gone a long time. I don't know if it's ever, hopefully it'll come back at some point. And anyway, I'll finish up with The Grove, which makes a nod to the old tradition, and another fast tune that I wrote myself. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, thanks so much. Have a great day. Thank you.
And like, I had a little CD player and